Week 1 of the new NFL season is officially in the history books. Let's review the main takeaways and important lessons that we learned from all the games. Starting with the Chiefs and the Lions. So the Chiefs came out and ended up losing in stunning fashion to the Detroit Lions, and it's all because of costly mistakes. Let's just get it out of the way. Kadarius Toney was garbage. The Giants right now are looking like they got an absolute steal by turning that draft pick into Darren Waller, while the Chiefs can't even get this guy to catch a single ball. Although, to be fair to Kadarius, he wasn't the only guy on the team. He was the main culprit, but in general, they definitely had butterfingers, and that lack of wide receiver depth as well as Kelsey being out definitely bit them in the butt. Inexperience was pretty bad in this one. It reared its ugly head. And yet, even with all of these issues, the Chiefs still managed to show flashes and just barely lose this game. When his receivers could catch in the first half of that game, Mahomes made some magnificent plays that show you that over time, as the Chiefs get used to everything going on and they adjust, that they'll probably be just fine. It's a good sign if the Chiefs can almost win despite all the mistakes. On the other side of it, how about them Lions, starting off the year 1-0 and beating the defending Super Bowl champions? You really can't draw up a better start even if you tried. This is the most exciting they've literally been in years, and quite possibly ever. Jared Goff, I will admit, was not amazing. He had some moments where he couldn't seem to get the ball by defensive linemen, constantly getting batted down at the line of scrimmage, but he played smart enough, and he was clutch when he needed to be to get this win. The Lions came in as underdogs, and they played a gutsy game with things like fake punts to really keep the Chiefs off guard, but they also took advantage of the mistakes made by their opponents. The Lions might have something here. They're going to have to play better than this moving forward, because I doubt that if they played the Chiefs again that the result would be the same, but it's a start, and it's one that makes you look forward to what's to come. The next place we gotta look towards is Sunday night, when the Giants got absolutely obliterated by the Dallas Cowboys in what can only be considered to be a pathetic performance that is absolutely inexcusable. The main learning point here is that the Giants are still obviously the third fiddle in the NFC East. I regret giving them any sort of trust to beat the Cowboys whatsoever, and it's clear that they are still very far away from being any kind of contender in the NFC. The Giants' O-line is still absolute garbage. Danny Dimes had zero time to throw every single play. It was like this for an entire 60-minute period. This game actually could have been super different had the first drive actually ended with some kind of points, but that one play of the blocked field goal basically set the tone for the rest of the game. The Giants abandoned their run game, they panicked, and they just couldn't get their act together. It was a really bad sign of inexperience and just not being prepared for that deadly Cowboys defense. It was one-sided in every way, shape, and form. The Cowboys on offense really didn't have to do much. The Giants just have to play a lot better, especially with a hard schedule this year, or they're not even coming close to the playoffs. The Cowboys, though, it was a really solid way to start. I just don't know what to really think of it. Maybe there is a chance the Cowboys are really that good, but the Giants could have also just had a really awful game. Dak wasn't really tested, and that's the thing, right? He didn't have to do anything. The defense, looking as dominant as they did, made it super easy, and they should continue to be good moving forward. But the question is, how will they hold up when the defense can't put up points, and when they can't get consistent stops, and when they're playing a solid offense? That'll be the real indicator on if the Cowboys are legit. The third big-time game that we've got to bring up is the Chargers versus Dolphins in the epic shootout in a potential game of the year scenario. In a week where there was a lot of sloppy play and not a bunch of teams firing on all cylinders, Chargers-Dolphins certainly did not disappoint. Tua came back with a vengeance in this one. After missing all that time from injury last season, he went out there and had one of the best individual performances we've seen in years by a quarterback with a 460-yard performance. If you had any doubts that Tua could ever be the same player, well, there you go. There's always a risk with him getting injured again, but if he can stay on the field, it's very obvious that the Miami Dolphins are, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most explosive teams in the NFL, and they can only get better as they get healthier on the defensive side of the ball. Tyreek Hill was also extremely dominant in this one, back to his old ways as usual, putting up a ridiculous 200-yard performance. He does it in his sleep. He could probably lead the league in receiving yards, no no problem if him and Tua stay healthy. And also, the Chargers once again showing us that they just can't close out and that their bad defense can't do anything to help them. It's always on Justin Herbert to win these games. He does everything in his power to. He drops a lot of points all the time, but his defense still has those mental lapses, like we saw on that final play in the first half with that super unnecessary push-off that would give the Dolphins a field goal that never should have happened, and that ended up being the differential with points needed for the Dolphins to win this game. The Dolphins are on the up, showing that when healthy, everything's great, and the Chargers are still remaining the same. Chargers are gonna Charger. Herbert and the guys are going to do everything in their power to give us some interesting games, some big-time shootouts, but a defense that should honestly be better than what we've seen in the last couple of years just can't seem to get it together. Joey Bosa's got to talk to those guys or something, man, because if this keeps up, the Chargers just aren't going to show any progression. They'll be the same exact team that we've seen for the last handful of years. There's still a lot of chances for them to improve. It's only week 1. That's where most of the overreactions come from, but to see the same thing happen again is very discouraging. The next game that we seem to learn a lot from is the Jets and Bills game, where the Jets somehow, someway, in their home building, beat the Bills despite Aaron Rodgers getting injured right at the beginning of the game. The Bills basically shot themselves in the foot. They had all of the opportunities in the world to run away with this one, especially with Rodgers going down and being replaced by Zach Wilson. This was their game to lose, and they basically just threw it away like a gift. Josh Allen just can't get it together. The nerves from the end of last season continued. 4 turnovers in the same game is a big yikes, and it's reminiscent of his early seasons in the NFL. He's going backwards instead of forward, which is just no bueno. This Jets defense was ferocious. The Bills didn't have much of a run game, so they had to constantly depend on Josh Allen, where he continuously just made bad decisions with the football. He wasn't using his legs enough. He was overthrowing receivers. He threw 3 interceptions to the same guy. He fumbled in a crucial moment. He just has to play better than this if the Bills want to keep that championship window open. You can't pick up from what we saw last year. There's got to be a change. You've got to have that mental reset, and so far Josh Allen hasn't gotten it together. They've been pretty frustrated with their shortcomings the last couple of years, and if they continue to have stuff like this happen at the beginning of this year, then that locker room might end up getting super upset really quickly, and we could see a super disappointing season out of the Buffalo Bills. Generally, though, this game was pretty crazy, and it was sneaky interesting with all the different things that went on. You have the Rodgers injury, you have Josh Allen and his constant mistakes, Zach Wilson late in the game getting his crap together, leading a drive to take the lead late in the fourth quarter with that crazy catch by Garrett Wilson over Tre'Davious White. Then the Bills responding at the last moment, waking up, nailing that field goal, dinking it off the post. You really can't make this stuff up. The script writers were going crazy in that fourth quarter, and just to have a bit of a cherry on top of the sundae, so to speak, the freaking Bills lose in overtime yet again, this time to a special teams moment with a punt return for a touchdown. Absolutely crazy stuff. You literally can't make it up. Only the Bills, man. Only the freaking Bills. But while the Jets come out victorious and was really exciting, at the end of the night, it was discovered that Aaron Rodgers tore his ACL and he'll be done for the year. The new Jets era pauses before it even begins. And at this point, I kind of just feel bad for Jets fans. They've waited literally a lifetime for a quarterback of Aaron Rodgers' stature to join their team, and now he may not ever be the same or even step on a football field ever again. They're talented enough to stay competitive for sure. They showed that last year. They're only going to get better with more experience. It's just with Zach Wilson, you really don't know if it's enough. Subjecting Jets fans to another year of the mom lover is something I wouldn't even wish upon my worst enemy. For the sake of Jets fans, I really hope that he makes the most of this. He's wanted to prove himself. He was mad when the Jets replaced him, so hopefully he goes out there and he shows his worth instead of being absolute trash and subjecting us to another year of the same old boring Jets. It's crazy to think we might just have a duplicate season from last year after all the hype during the preseason. I feel super bad for Jets fans, and I hope y'all figure out a way to still be entertaining. From there, we move over to another horrific quarterback performance by one of the best QBs in the league. The Cincinnati Bengals have yet another terrible opening to their season for what feels like the millionth year in a row. The Browns, just like the Cowboys, didn't have to do much of anything to win this game. They just had to sit back and watch the other team explode from the inside out. Joe Burrow, after getting a record extension, couldn't even surpass 100 yards of offense. The Bengals basically beat themselves with how sloppy they were, but honestly, I still wouldn't be that happy if I was a Browns fan. Deshaun Watson did not look impressive. He's gonna need to play a lot better if the Browns want to make the playoffs. This was the fear for a lot of people, that he's just not the same guy anymore, and that first week still showed a lot of rust that you were hoping he'd finally shake off after a whole entire offseason to work with his new team. Underthrowing receivers, not throwing for a lot of yards despite your offense being on the field a lot of this game. It's just super disappointing, even though they have a lot of good pieces over there. It's crazy that QB is still holding them back. Browns definitely have a lot of questions that still need answers, much like the Dallas Cowboys. The Bengals themselves, though, while they are starting off really badly, I'm expecting them to bounce back. Maybe they'll be bad for another week or two, but they always figure it out. Joe Burrow's gonna be fine. He usually has slow starts. So let's just give him and the Bengals some time. They're still literally peaking. They have a lot of time for their championship window, so don't be surprised if they rip off a bunch of big wins in a row sooner rather than later. Another main takeaway from the week is the rookie quarterbacks getting their starts. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, all taking the field for the first time this year. And none of them looked all that great except for Anthony Richardson, the third quarterback taken off the board. With the least amount of expectations, he goes out there and he plays noticeably better than Stroud or Young was able to. Those guys made mistakes and couldn't get much offense generated at all, but Richardson managed to put up a handful of points against a division rival and the clear-cut favorite to run away with that division. Despite being such a raw talent, he had some impressive throws. He was able to run the football somewhat effectively. He looked pretty good out there for a guy with not really any expectations whatsoever. But Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, not too impressed with what I saw from either of those guys. It's still early on, it's your welcome to the NFL moment, but you're just expecting a bit more as the new franchise quarterbacks. Bryce Young had a lot of opportunities against a Falcons team that leaves a lot to be desired, but with all the opportunities that he was given, he threw them away. Quite literally, with two pretty bad interceptions to seal the deal against a Falcons team they actually could have beaten on the road had he just played a bit smarter. Again, though, he's a rookie, can't expect that much, but still a little disappointing. And with CJ Stroud, he just couldn't even find the end zone at all. He was at the mercy of the Baltimore Ravens. Not the easiest opponent, mind you, to go up against in your rookie debut, so hopefully against the Colts next week he can do better, but it's not going to be easy because they do have some veterans on that defense. Be on the lookout for all of these rookie QBs. They're in an interesting race right now where it feels like Richardson honestly might be in the best situation out of all of them, which is pretty unexpected, so that should be fun to keep an eye on. Another game I wanted to bring up, which was an interesting learning point, was the Minnesota Vikings taking an L, surprisingly, to the Baker Mayfield Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Vikings were largely expected to march in there and win this very easily, but interestingly enough, they ended up finally losing a game by one score, something that they didn't do in the slightest last year except for in the playoffs. And funny thing is, it's all Kirk Cousins' fault, as those 3 turnovers really ended up killing the Minnesota Vikings and any chance they had in a one-score situation. It seems like they used up all of their luck in bulk last year for winning close games. There's no magic left over for this year, and now they might end up being the anti-clutch team rather than the clutch team that ends up padding their way to like a 13-win season when they don't feel like a 13-win team. Kinda crazy to me, though, that you can lose when Justin Jefferson's getting over 150 yards of offense. I don't know how you managed to do that. Literally only Kirk Cousins, man. I swear to God, only him and the Vikings could make something like that happen. But on the other side of it, congrats to Baker Mayfield. He marches into Minnesota down a score and leads a game-winning drive, surprisingly. He didn't light up the scoreboard, but he was surprisingly efficient with the football, had a couple of big-time touchdowns, and he kept the Buccaneers out of trouble, which is the big reason why they triumphed over a Vikings team that kept shooting themselves in the foot. The thing with the Buccaneers is they're definitely talented on both sides of the ball. They're a few years removed from their Super Bowl primes, but they still have some really good, notable players that can be leaders and that can make those stops and make those huge plays. The real question mark is Baker Mayfield with this team. If he can even just be a game manager and stay out of trouble, the Buccaneers can probably win a lot of games just like this one, just by simply playing a cleaner game. It's not always going to be pretty, and I'm not expecting the Buccaneers to put up a ridiculous number of points every game, but it might be enough to have a somewhat decent record that may be a little unexpected in the eyes of most fans. With Niners and Steelers, not much to talk about there. The Niners put on an absolute clinic in the first half of the game, and it was over as soon as that half ended. There really just isn't any bright spots for the Steelers to be seen. That 49ers defense consumed them. Pickett couldn't put any points up, showing that he still has a lot to learn and that this defense was very formidable. But on the bright side, the 49ers, against a pretty solid Steelers defense, put up some points with relative ease early on. Brock Purdy looked comfortable out there, which is a great sign for 49ers fans in their attempt to get to the Super Bowl. You've also got the Bears and Packers, a brand new chapter in the NFC North rivalry, and it feels like Aaron Rodgers never even left. The Bears, despite talking all that smack during the offseason, looked incredibly average. Their offensive line still sucks. Justin Fields couldn't do much of anything in this one. He couldn't even connect with DJ Moore. Rip my fantasy team. And the Packers kind of just ran away with it. The Bears made a couple mistakes here and there. The Pack did what they needed to. They're efficient with the ball. Jordan Love looked decent in his debut. Nothing spectacular, but he definitely got the job done. That Pack defense looks pretty decent. They're connecting well. Christian Watson should be coming back soon. So maybe the Packers end up doing better than the Bears like some of us thought they would. And for the sake of Bears fans, I hope that eventually they figure it out so they can back up your trash talk. Otherwise, this is going to be a pretty painful season for y'all. Finally, you've got Seahawks versus the Rams, and this one certainly did not go the way that I expected it to. There's some serious question marks about the Seahawks once again, as Geno Smith turned back the clock and looked incredibly mediocre again. I'm praying he just wasn't a one-year wonder. I hope he still has something left in the tank, especially with that offense. But they just couldn't score any points. It seemed like they had the momentum, but they literally didn't put up anything in the second half of this game. But hey, how about them Rams? Getting a W and not being complete and utter garbage like I thought they'd be. Matt Stafford looked a lot better coming off injury. It seems like all the stuff about him being healthier than ever before was definitely true. He was throwing darts to people I haven't even heard of before. Aaron Donald was looking dominant and motivated. This is a great start for the Rams, and if they eventually get Cooper Kupp back at some point in the near future, maybe the Rams can still be competitive in their division after all. And that's the main takeaways for all the games. For a general takeaway as to how this week went, really sloppy stuff. A bunch of teams got off to a really slow start. In fact, I'd argue most teams did. It ended up being more of a defensive showdown with a lot of defensive plays being made, which is the opposite of what we saw 1 year prior, where there was a lot of offense going on. I don't mind seeing more of an emphasis on defense once in a while. I think it's good for the game to not have it just be a one-sided sport. However, a lot of it is also teams simply making mistakes and being sloppy. A lot of veteran quarterbacks just not playing well and up to standard. And then other teams like the Giants, for example, just completely collapsing and playing like garbage in all facets. It's just not a good look. It seems like the preseason wasn't enough, almost like they need the extra week to train because some teams just weren't ready. And I'm hoping that in the coming weeks, maybe we see a bit more offense and we see a couple more games like the Dolphins Chargers, rather than just a bunch of blowouts and low-scoring games. Anyway, that basically does it. Those are my main takeaways and points of interest from week 1 of the new NFL season. Let me know what you learned and what you found the most entertaining down in the comments below. And of course, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more NFL content.